You opened the app without thinking. You were just checking. And then you saw it. Someone from your past. Someone you barely remember. Living a life that looked just a little better than yours. Maybe it was a promotion. Maybe it was a house. Maybe it was a smile in a photo that seemed to say, "I figured it out." You closed the app. But the feeling stayed. That feeling has a name. And it is much older than your phone. The urge to compare yourself to others is not a flaw in your personality. It is not a habit you developed from too much scrolling. It is a mechanism built into your brain over hundreds of thousands of years, one that kept your ancestors alive in conditions you can barely imagine. The problem is that it never got updated. The same wiring that once helped a prehistoric human survive is now misfiring every time you look at someone else's highlight reel. And understanding exactly why it works the way it does will change how you see yourself, starting today. Back in the year 2000, psychologist Leon Festinger was not the first to notice that humans compare themselves to others, but he was the first to explain why in a way that actually held up. His theory of social comparison proposed that humans have a fundamental drive to evaluate their own opinions and abilities, and that in the absence of objective information, they do this by measuring themselves against other people. Festinger called it a basic human need, not an impulse, not a weakness, a need. Think about what life looked like for your ancestors 200,000 years ago. There were no standardized tests, no salary ranges, no performance reviews. There was no way to measure how capable you were except by looking around at the people near you. Were you fast enough? Were you strong enough? Could you read the weather better than the person next to you? Were you a valuable enough member of the group that they would keep you around when resources ran out? Your survival depended on the answer. In small social groups of 20 to 150 people, the size researchers now believe our brains were wired to handle, a figure evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar famously called the social brain limit. Your relative standing within the group determined everything. Whether you ate, whether you mated, whether you were protected during a predator attack or left slightly outside the circle of help. Comparison was not vanity. Comparison was intelligence gathering about your own survival odds. Your brain built a system to do this automatically. It never asks for your permission. It just runs. Here is where it gets strange. The system did not evolve to make you feel good. It evolved to make you feel just uncomfortable enough to act. When social psychologist Ari Kruglansky and his colleagues studied what happens in the brain when we perceive ourselves as falling behind others, they found that the discomfort triggers the same neural pathways as physical pain. Not metaphorically, literally. The same circuits that fire when you stub your toe activate when you feel socially outpaced. Your brain registers social comparison loss as a threat to your body. That is why you cannot just think your way out of it. You cannot sit down, reason through it, and decide that someone else's success does not affect you. Your brain is not in a philosophical mood. It is in emergency mode. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. But here is where the ancient design and modern life start to collide. Your ancestors compared themselves to the people they could actually see. The people in their tribe, their neighbors, the person sleeping next to the same fire. The sample size was small. The competition was real and immediate and bounded. If you looked around and saw that you were roughly similar in status to most people nearby, the system quieted down. The anxiety leveled off. You were safe. Now imagine what happens when that same system gets handed a smartphone. Suddenly, the comparison pool is not 20 or 50 people. It is everyone who has ever posted a photo of their vacation home. Everyone who has published a book. Everyone who closed a funding round. Everyone who got married younger, lost weight faster, traveled more, earned more, smiled more convincingly. Your brain was never designed to process a social landscape that size. But it does not know that. It just keeps running the old program. It keeps scanning, measuring, flagging, alarming. Researcher Sonia Lubomirsky at the University of California, Riverside spent years studying what she calls chronic social comparison orientation, the tendency in some people to evaluate their lives primarily through comparison rather than through their own internal sense of satisfaction. She found that people high in this orientation were consistently less happy, regardless of how well their lives were actually going. They could be thriving by every measurable standard and still feel behind.